Hey there, I'm Thea Dudley, also known as the Credit Overlord, and welcome to LBM Talks Credit. We are the only podcast that talks trade credit in the lumber and building material space. Never miss an episode, stay tuned, and we're glad you're here. Hey, stress and burnout are on the menu today. Hello, and thanks for joining us at LBM Talks Credit. Thea Dudley here, and joining us is the incredible Nicole Hicks. Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me, Thea. I appreciate it.
Well, for those of you who don't know Nicole, she has been in LBM credit for, over 2 decades. And she's led credit teams, done the whole credit manager role. And her company is, the companies that she's worked for have gone through, just like the rest of us, lots of mergers, acquisitions. You start working for a company one day, then it's another company. And then after a while, after a couple of decades, you're like, I don't know that I want to do this anymore. And so what I love about you, Nicole, is what you're doing now. This is you were great before, but I love what you've transitioned into, and career coach, career ownership coach. And that's a phrase that I hadn't heard before. And why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about it?
Okay, yeah, definitely. It's definitely different. It's not necessarily mainstream. So what I do is help people who are in a transitional place in their career, maybe looking at a pivot, and just help them navigate that experience, because in this day and age, we have so much information available to us that it's almost overwhelming. So when we're looking at a change, we don't really know which information to tap into. So I help with that. I help kind of narrow that down, start with some goal setting, really figure out what direction it is that makes sense for my client, and then provide those resources that make the most sense for them to tap into. So just kind of take something that's overwhelming. Sometimes we get to a place where we just shut down and just continue down the same path, even though it doesn't make sense, because we don't have that support and an advocate that are helping guide us and helping us understand that we should be confident in our soft skills, not just necessarily rely on those hard skill sets that we have. And we can do a lot of things with that.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, credit managers have, not that everybody doesn't have stress and burnout, but when you're in a role that is, it constantly feels like people are coming at you, and someone's always upset with you. And if you're somebody who kind of wears their heart on their sleeve or takes it personally, first of all, you're not going to survive in this role for any length of time. It's a constant pressure cooker of, I've got to get, I've got salespeople coming at me. I've got the CFO coming at me. I've got customers coming at me. If I'm leading the team, I've got them coming at me, and you spend all your days solving problems, and you're trying to do it in a coaching, patient manner, because yelling at people is frowned upon by HR. So when you look at all that, it's no wonder that a lot of people look at credit managers, and we have the reputation of, God, she's so crunchy. I just don't want to go in there again. She's just burnt out. She's just burnt out. She's no fun. It's like, well, of course I'm no fun. I've got all this bad debt I'm looking at. We're selling, a bunch of ding dongs that, what can you tell a credit manager? How do you coach them through something like that? Like, if I came to you and said, Nicole, some of these people, I just can't. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm unhappy with my work. I don't want to necessarily leave my company, but how can I recenter? What can I do to make this role better?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things, and a lot of things that I didn't learn and understand until I hit that 10 to 15 year mark. You just kind of go through the grind day after day and do whatever you have to do. Everybody's different, but you just do whatever you have to do to get through. And so I did that for so long until I figured out there's got to be a better way to handle a job like this. You hear people say, we're not performing brain surgery here. You hear that all the time. And so it takes the role, it kind of dumbs it down, almost, brings it down to a level. It's like less meaningful, even though we know the value that we add to an organization, which is also challenging because we know what we do. And when somebody says it's not that big of a deal, that's just another layer that we have to try to unpack. So I have learned over the second half of my career that everybody's different in how they handle the role and what they need to do for themselves. But the bottom line is you need to advocate for yourself and your mental health. We all hear mental health being very important and a high priority in today's day and age. So if you don't have leadership or a company that supports that, you need to advocate for that for yourself. Hopefully you have a department head that understands the importance of that and forces people. What I did for my team was I forced them to step away. If it's too much and you've had too many customer interactions or sales rep interactions that week, to the point where the next guy that you call is you're going to have a come apart on him, it's time for you to go for a walk. Or, and it's okay to do that. I think sometimes there's a stigma around saying that we've had enough, or, we're just done for the week. Take Friday off. Send your person, your credit manager, your guy, your gal to do something for that Friday afternoon. Go golfing, whatever it takes. Like I said, everybody has a different way, a different outlet, place to recharge, but it just comes down to taking care of yourself and recognizing those warning signs of meltdown. I don't think any of us can just take this job day in and day out and pretend like it's not having an effect. If we're not externalizing it, we're internalizing it, and that will have an effect down the road.
I think that's a good call out when you look at this role. And like you said, people say, oh, you're not performing brain surgery. It's like, okay, I'm not performing brain surgery, but I just told somebody I'm going to lean your project. The owner of this project now is like, what do you mean I paid them? So you've got all of these people in it's very high stress, very personal to them situations. And so now you're having to combat that. You're having to have those conversations, and then you have them internally as well. So after a while, conversation after conversation like that does wear on you. And if you don't step away, but I know a lot of credit managers, and I know you do too, where I can't possibly step away. I'm the only person in my company that does this. I can't, I'm old school. It's like, okay, you're going to be dead in there. You're going to have a heart attack and die behind that desk because you won't take care of yourself. And mentally, you're not going to be performing well, or worse, you just don't give a rip anymore. You're like, I don't really care. This place could burn to the ground and I'm just going to let it because nobody else cares. I'm constantly getting overridden. I'm just not going to continue to do this. So you talked about advocating. What if you are at a company where someone isn't listening to you advocating, or you don't have someone who's going to help advocate or champion for you? Is that time to go, you know what? I need to leave and stop making excuses for being here?
I think so. It's hard. It's easier said than done, right? Because we get
true.
comfortable.
It's scary too. It's really scary.
Yeah, it is. So, and I'm not one, I was in that same situation a couple of different times where the thought of transitioning to another company, another industry was so scary and intimidating that I just stayed and put up with, whatever it was at the time, just overwhelm. And I am a pretty healthy person. I thought I can just buckle down and, roll up my shirt sleeves and get through this. Well, the reality is, and this kind of slapped me in the face, is that you can probably do that for a pretty extended period of time, but it will cause you some problems at some point health-wise. We all hear the statistics around stress being a silent killer. And I thought, except for me, right? It won't affect me. I'm above that. I've got thick skin. We have to have thick
I've got
skin.
this. I'm totally cool.
Right. And
I'm Wonder Woman. I can handle it all. Because you did reference to people sometimes have a hard time stepping away and saying, you know what, I need a beat, because I don't want you to think I look weak. I don't want you to go, well, I told you she couldn't handle the pressure. It's like,
Mhm.
dude, it's not that I can't handle the pressure. I know when I need to take care of myself. I know when I need to step back.
Yeah,
But it's hard when you it's hard to do in it takes you a long time to get there. You have to become,
for
and
sure.
some people never get there, but you have to get really seasoned to the point where you fight for it.
Absolutely. You have to have confidence that you do bring value to the organization and that this isn't the last job on earth. So if you're not feeling valued where you're at now, there are credit roles out there. It's not exactly an industry or career path that everybody's driving. They're not promoting that in high
Yeah.
school. Next level advanced educational programs. There's not a college degree for it. So there are positions out there, and you just need confidence. Again, easier said than done, but that you will bring that value somewhere else where they do recognize, that what you do for the importance of a credit manager, a good credit manager, driving sales, building relationships with your sales team, building relationships with your customer base. It's so much more involved than just collecting. I think there's also that stigma. You're just a collector. And a good credit manager is a lot more than that. So, yeah. Yeah, it
That's
is.
true.
I think
There's
when you get to that place, it is time for you to evaluate your options and maybe start looking elsewhere.
so you when you get to that point, and we've all had those days where it's like, I am so out of this dump. You know what? I don't care. You know what? I'd like to see what happens when I'm not here and this place falls apart. And you have those days because you're so just over everything that's happened and you're stressed and you're eating your 18th piece of chocolate and thinking, why does these pants not fit right? So
Right.
and you're going through that. And then you come in, you go home, you go to sleep, it kind of dies down. And then next week, so it gets off your radar. And then the next week it happens again. And it becomes a lifestyle pattern that you just start rolling with. How do you coach somebody out of that?
So I think that we all become so attached to our job, our career, that becomes our identity. And I think the first step is understanding that you as a human being are more than your job. You bring more value to your family, to your friends, that you're not just a credit manager. And so if you can separate yourself from that and understand that you're more than that, I think that is a starting point. Because for me, for years, I thought, when I introduce myself to a group or to somebody else, it's always the first question, what do you do? What do you do for a living? Well, I'm a credit manager. You feel pretty important because you're in charge of millions and millions of dollars every year. I mean, if you screw up and lose several million of it, it's pretty catastrophic. So you do start in your head feeling pretty important, and it is, and you should. But also, just being able to step away from that on Friday night and understanding that, you're dealing with human beings and all of the issues that come along with that. You're a human being, you have your own sets of issues to work with. And so I just think sometimes we get so attached, our identity just gets so attached to, this is what I do. And and that's not healthy. And so that is for me. I didn't come to that understanding for a long time. But it helped just take that pressure off. Instead of measuring myself, you're measuring. Even throughout the weekend, I was measuring, my metrics. Where am I going to be on Monday? Or is there checks coming in over the weekend? And, what is that going to look like in comparison to my peers, my counterparts? Am I going to be better than them? It's this scarcity loop almost that you get consumed with. And it's almost, I look at credit management as almost like a gambling problem. You get so sucked into that cycle where there's a lot of bad days, but then there's those wins, and those sometimes overpower those bad days, and you're an unhealthy relationship. It's like, oh, this sucks. I've had all these bad encounters, but then you get that check that you've been waiting for. And so you repeat recycle, repeat, and you feel like it's okay again. So just recognizing those patterns, and acknowledging that you might be stuck in that is important.
I love that you compared it to gambling, because I've always said Vegas has no allure for me. I gamble for a living, and it's true. I mean, even
Mhm.
something where it's like, I got this $100 check, which is nothing, not a drop in the bucket on the AR, but it's that I've been fighting this guy for like 8 months. And I could have literally written this off and never looked back again, because it made no difference to the company. But it was just that I wasn't going to lose a dime. I wasn't going to let anything go. I put more pressure on myself than what the company actually did. Because, at one point, that particular CFO is like, I can't believe that you spent that much time on $100. Let me tell you how much that cost us. I'm like, well, you just took the one moment of joy from my day and just sucked it right out, because yes, you are absolutely right, but you're missing the point. I had to come to the realization of, here are the wins, here are the losses, what makes sense, what's the fiduciary duty, where's the best bang for the buck, and could I true this up if I had to stand in front of somebody and talk about it, where it's like, it's $100. Are we going to worry about $100, or are we going to go after this $100,000? I know you did this job for a really long time. I love this role. I think credit's the best department in the company, but it does come with some baggage that you have to figure out how you're going to unpack.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what I noticed too, working with so many other credit managers over the years, is that most companies have a set of metrics and goals that you're supposed to attain, the KPIs, that you're supposed to hit targets, and your paycheck is usually bound to that in some shape. But typically credit managers are data driven, analytical types. We set the bar high. If you're good at what you do, you almost set your own set of metrics outside of what the company's expectations are, which that can be disastrous, but because especially when you have years of experience, you know what you're capable of doing. And so we add extra pressure on ourselves, because while the company may be okay with a portfolio of 65% current and $10 million a year in write-offs, internally, we're not satisfied with those results. And it's really hard to detach from that once you get, especially if you move from company to company, or your company changes its goals, in year 3, they want to just loosen credit up a little bit, and you're used to it being tight and being in these guardrails.
That's like a credit manager's like worst nightmare. You start like twitching. It's like, what do you mean? Define loosen up? Because what the sales guy heard was floodgates are open, and what I heard is, one more, we're gonna move the bar a little bit because you guys don't have good boundaries.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, that personal commitment we have to this job. We start to treat that as our own checkbook.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy to look from an outsider's perspective, look into the credit manager role and go, I don't know why you're getting so worked up over that. We budgeted for this. But it's hard to not take that so personally, that you failed, and so years of that mindset, thinking that you failed, you let somebody down, maybe you let the customer down because you overshipped and then put them out of business. We think through those situations all the time. We have customers tell us, you created this problem, you pre-leaned, or you leaned the wrong property, and now I'm done because you did it. So just all those thoughts, we may think we can just brush them off and just move on with our day, but those do bury themselves into our subconscious. And over time, that does wear you down, and it does make you, crunchy over time, and irritable, and almost toxic. So you just have
you
to
start to get hard.
There needs to be awareness. You need
it.
to be paying attention. Yeah.
And that's where I think that, negative connotations for credit people come up. And so to avoid that, and to, if you want to stay in this role, and and you like the company that you work for overall, but you're like, I've got to take some of this pressure off. We talked about advocating. What other things can somebody do? Or it's like, go get a sport, or, take up, I don't know, come up with some activity, or, do puzzles or word teasers or something that gets you out of the headset of what you were looking at. And then, Nicole, I look at what you do as, okay, so if I need somebody to go, hey, coach me through how I can be better at this job, how does that look? I mean, what kind of things can you share with us that would make a difference to somebody's mindset?
Yeah, so I actually this is, and I wish I had this tool a long time ago. I don't know if it was even in existence then, but there is a course called Positive Intelligence that I've been working through. It's a 7 or 8 week course, and it's just on your own. You do little activities and have these little interactions throughout the day, but it's a mindset check, really. And so they start out and they help you understand your saboteurs, is what they call. So what brings you down? Your mind is, sometimes it's telling you you suck at your job, and so that's an unhealthy place to be. And so this course helps you work through that and recognize, where is that negativity? Where does that lay for you? Again, everybody's different. We all have different backgrounds, we have different experiences. And so it's very customized to you so that you can understand, when you're having a bad day, somebody just unloaded, all of their problems on you. How is that affecting you? Just take, 2 or 3 minutes. We all can do that. We can take 2 or 3 minutes to pause and do something positive versus scrolling social media, just
Oh yeah.
burying our head and scanning down through just to try to build ourselves back up, prepare for the next call, the next meeting, whatever. So that tool, I think, in and of itself
Okay.
is so powerful for all of us. And it forces you, we don't learn by just reading a book and then moving on to the next book without putting these tools into practice. So this it's an app, I guess. You can put this to use every day, and it teaches you how to do that. So over 7 weeks, you have to work at it and know that this is a lifelong practice. This isn't something that's one and done. I've finished my 7 weeks and I'm good. I'm golden. I can work through any experience. It's life just isn't that way. But I think that should be something that credit departments roll out and make mandatory. It's a healthy thing to do for your team. So that's one tool that I've come
Okay.
across that I wish I had long ago.
Any of those things that help you process through. I know I've been asked, and have you done a disc assessments? Have you done this? It's like, yeah, I'm at the age where I know my personality, I know my flaws, I know what type of leader I am, but I've also been doing that for a long time. I know myself, and I've learned how to kind of navigate some of those feelings, get up. It took a lot of willpower to go, the world's not going to fall apart if I walk away and I'm gone for half an hour on a walk around the neighborhood, or I ran to, wherever, I'm just going to walk around Ulta and look at just stuff I don't, for the next greatest shade of nude lipstick that I don't need. But anything that gets me out of my headspace, anything that helps, just sometimes changing where I am, sometimes changing the location, and then coming back with a fresh perspective. I had a boss that, he always had a great attitude, but he forced himself. This man took a lunch. It was a half an hour every day. And it was never, I'm too busy. He made the time. And for him, that was how he maintained, keeping the stress at bay or putting things in perspective. And I was really jealous of that. I
Mhm.
wanted to emulate that. And I tried really hard. I was not always successful. He was so good at it. And that's, I think, finding things that work for you. But if you haven't, those are having somebody suggest some things. And, I love taking those courses.
Mhm.
I think anything like that that can help you grow is going to help alleviate some of that stress.
Absolutely. And just talking to somebody, hopefully you have a peer, a mentor that you can bounce things off of, maybe somebody who's experienced this world longer than you have, and has implemented some things that help them get through their day. My hope is that there's leadership out there now understanding these things and working on improving the environment, or the schedule. I mean, just simple things like a work schedule change, maybe you rotate half days, and just that extra time helps you and your team. Treating yourself, go get a massage or, do something like that. Reward yourself. If you do have a big win, go reward yourself. If your team or your leadership isn't going to do that for you, I think you need to take that upon yourself.
Do a little
So
self-care.
absolutely.
That's something that I wish I'd have done more of when I was younger in my career, that I did more things to kind of guard that mental health, like you said.
Mhm.
Um, I know that's one thing that people tend to overlook. It's indulgent. It's like, go get, whatever makes you happy, even if, it's just taking a walk, getting away from that mindset.
Absolutely. And based on your experience, don't you feel like over just the last 20 years, we're moving in a better direction? Because
Yes.
20 years ago, this wasn't even a conversation.
No,
Stress was
you
just
were
part of.
afraid to say something. You were afraid to
Absolutely.
admit you needed a beat. You're like, no, I'm here from dawn to dusk, and I'm awesome, and nothing gets me, and I'm the iron.
Yeah.
I'm just made of steel. And it's like, no, I don't want to be that person anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's okay to be human, but 20 years ago, you were a robot. You showed up
Yeah.
and you performed and you didn't miss a beat. And that was reality. And it was kind of looked, every job has stress. Every job has some form of that. So we could downplay it a little bit. Like, gosh, being a sales guy isn't all rainbows and unicorns either. So I should just suck it up and, just get it done.
Yeah, how many
So
times did they get told no? It's like,
yeah, right.
how many ways have you been told no? Just run through that with me, so that I can feel better about life. I think that's
Right.
really, kind of a fun, that'd be a fun game to have with your salespeople.
Right.
But
Right.
I do think that with all the technology that's come along, and, the awareness
Mhm.
that you don't have to be everything to everybody, where it's like, I don't want anyone to think that I can't handle it, or that I had a moment. It's like, I think I would have stabbed myself in the eye before I let anybody see me cry.
100%. Yes.
You're
Absolutely.
like, that's not the vision that I want people to take away, because the first thing they say is, well, she can't handle the pressure. It's like, sometimes sometimes you're going to leak.
Yeah.
It's just going to, you, there's just days that it's a lot coming at you. But I love that there's more resources out there now. And just the fact that you transitioned from, hey, I did this, it was really cool, but I'm ready to start something different, and then I can turn around and help the industry that I just came out of, because I understand the role. I I think that's such the biggest thing, is that I know you get where I'm coming from. If I call you and say, I really need us to connect and talk, and, can we put something together for my team and for me, and, kind of roll that out, because I need my team to be healthy and on the ball and making good decisions, where, that wasn't available before.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the turning point for me, Thea, when I recognized I had a problem, an addiction to this career problem, and that's ultimately why it was time for me to pivot, because I was going to be that person that did this for 60 years, because I was in that cycle. But my husband approached me one day and he said, I would like to train horses. I think that would be really fun. He's retired military, so he's got some options. And I looked at him and I said, my numbers brain, I'm so metrics, KPI, numbers driven, it's sickening. I was at the time, I'm working on it. I said, well, show me the numbers. How is this going to make sense financially? And he looked at me and he gave me this look like, you're sick. what is wrong with you? Numbers. He's like, it's just something I want to do. And I thought, yeah, I guess you can do that. That it doesn't need to be measured.
But
But
that's
I
not
had
how your
become
brain has
this.
been wired to think for the last couple decades.
Exactly. So that's when I looked at my life and I thought, you know what? It's time for me to do something that has more intrinsic value. I really can't measure my success now, which is terrifying in some aspects. But I'm not attached to an Excel spreadsheet anymore. And so I'm learning, that there's more to life than numbers and hitting these targets. And so if you find yourself feeling like that's what your life has become, that's definitely do some self-evaluation and introspection to see, if it's consuming you.
Well, and I think that's a good call out. You've got generations that are staying in the workforce a lot longer. And I don't know whether they're not retiring because they don't know what to do with themselves, or, they're in a spot where they need the work, they need the money, or where they're like, I'm just going to stay a little longer because I really don't know what I would do if I go home. But you're miserable and you're making everybody else miserable because you've been in this role long enough that maybe your mindset, you haven't taken care of it. And you see that you've been to the same credit conference as I have, and you'll see a group that you're like, oh my God, please don't let that be my fate. They just look so friggin' miserable. Nothing makes them happy. In fact, I think they like get joy out of their misery. I don't want to be that person. I got to get the hell out of here.
Right. Right. I had a really good credit manager. I won't name names, but she at one of those conferences, she was switching to a different industry. So she had spent, 20 something years in the same industry. And just that simple industry change for her was refreshing and rejuvenating. She was still in the same career field, but she needed to learn a different industry. And she said to me, because I thought it was crazy, once you spend that much time working with the same group of contractors, you can do it in your sleep. It's easy. You just show up and it's not that big of a deal. But so for her to make that change back then, I thought, you're nuts. I wouldn't want to learn a new industry. I love feeling comfortable. But her words were, I have become less effective at my role because I have been so attached to these same contractors, the same sales guys for 20 years. And I realized that I owe the company the favor of stepping down. I am not helping at this stage. I am actually hurting the accounts receivable because you start building relationships, maybe letting this slip a little bit. You do become less effective. Maybe you're just not on top of your game because you're just so used to the day in, the
Yeah,
day
you're
out.
autopiloting.
Absolutely. So if you force your brain to start thinking harder because you maybe don't understand, mechanics liens, you haven't used that in your practice before, now you do, that may be beneficial. So, um, anyway, I'll never forget that. Just a different outlook, something that, just a different perspective that I hadn't looked at before.
When you're in any type of role for any length of time, even if you love it, you love the company, you love what you're doing, you need to keep finding ways to challenge yourself and to keep it fresh.
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
you become that crunchy person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe continuing education, or something like that, going to a new seminar, learning the psychology of credit, just stepping into a different uncharted piece of territory. But yeah, I
Take an
agree with you.
FBI course. I mean, take something that's
Yeah,
related, but maybe really out of the scope. Do something
absolutely.
unique.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I have loved getting to spend time with you and getting to share what you're doing and how to get credit people to take better care of themselves, to just take a step back and look at, hey, if you're going to be healthy and do the best for your company, you need to take those breaks. You need to find those triggers, those outlets. So Nicole, I know people are going to want to get a hold of you. We're going to go ahead and link your email into this episode so people can find you. I love what you're doing. I love that you are there for the industry. You're an amazing talent. I know that having you as a resource, knowing that you understand the job, because that's always been a huge pet peeve of mine was, some guy from, let's say, I don't know, one of the commercial credit reporting services, and they're going to come in and tell me, let me tell you how to do your job, or let me tell you why this is important to your job. And I'm like, have you ever done my job? Well, no. Skippy, sit down. You have no idea what you're coming from. If I come to you and I'm like, this is how I'm feeling, you get it. And that puts you in a great position to help me learn how to channel that, improve, and get better. And that's really what this is all about. And I'm so grateful that you were able to carve out some time for us.
Absolutely. So happy to do it.